today for our first beat, I'm gonna try and make a reggaeton beat style idea. And you know, the way I like to get started with this is just first figuring out the tempo. Reggaeton basically, you know, it could be from, you know, a lot of different ways. You can have like a really slow tempo reggaeton, but you can also have a fast one. So best way to go through it for me is just going into the middle section. So I'll go like at 92 BPM, which is something that's, you know, relatively in between. And, you know, along the way, we can probably, you know, choose to like speed it up, like slow it down a little bit. But it's a good, you know, starting point. So first of all, let's just go over here and just like turn this down until like a 92. And I think this is, you know, a good idea for you guys to start off, unless you have a specific, you know, goal in mind. This is a good starting point. So, you know, going into this, and, you know, for me, my process, you know, it's just finding the right sound. It's something very, you know, important that I encourage everybody, you know, at home to, you know, really have in mind that, you know, finding the right sound can make a huge difference in, you know, in a beat and, you know, whatever you want to achieve on the track. Because, you know, you can maybe have a great melody, but the sound isn't, you know, the quality isn't there. It's not big enough. It doesn't cover as much space. So you need to like keep adding and stacking sounds, and it would probably, you know, mess a little bit with the mix at the end. So, you know, that's something that I would really prioritize, is getting the right sound. And it will take a while. Sometimes you get it like super fast, but, you know, it's worth it. So let's start like going through some plugins. And, you know, I've been working with this one, Ana 2 from Slate Digital, Sonic Academy. I think it's a good synthesizer, has a little bit of everything. And so, you know, I want to try and find ideally some keys and, you know, get a main melody from it. I think that's a perfect starting point to just figure out where your track is going to. So let's just scroll through sounds and find the right one. So I'll go over here to the key section, and, you know, let's start on this journey to find the right sound. So let's go over here to the keyboard controller and see where that takes us. I'm not sure about this one. Sounds too much like an organ. It's not what we're looking for. Okay. This is more like it, but it has a weird alone. Sometimes you'll need to like mess around with the sound. Maybe something there, but so let's see if this takes out. Yeah. Okay, so I'm pretty comfortable with this one. So let's find a melody. I think finding the right melody, right chord progression, you know, will really guide us to see, you know, where we need to like go to. So I'll start like just playing around some melody ideas. Like this arpeggio type, you know. So let's start like playing around and recording and see if this works. So I think we have something here. So now let's just like get the right, take on it, quantize it, and, start building from there. So I think the last half was the more polished one. So let's just like come over here and quantize, which I would just like select everything. Then Command U would be the have everything quantized, and see if this sounds a little bit better. Let's take this click off. Yeah, I think we got something there. So from here, since it's kind of like, an arpeggio, I want to try and find like, the right chords underneath it. So let's say when we get to a point where we want to have something a little bit more stripped down, not as busy as this, arpeggio, we can have like a different, pattern. Could probably work for a verse, an intro. So I'm gonna duplicate this plugin and use the same sound, but just to create the chords of it. So let's start playing around with some chords underneath this cool arpeggio that we already have, and see if we can keep building on this track. I think it works, but when we play it on a chord, it starts doing a weird sound too. So let's try and tweak this sound a little bit more. So since it starts doing like a weird sound, let's just like find another sound that could probably work together with this arpeggio idea that we have. So let's start scrolling to a little bit more different sounds, and probably we can combine them together. So I think this could work. So let's start recording this too. Let's put the click on and record. So I think we have our chord progression and we have our arpeggio. Sometimes I like quantizing because, I want to get a sense of where everything is and that it sounds, close to like that perfect, on the grid. For this one over here, I'm just going to quantize the lower like keys of it, so you can have nothing, coming in before, because the lower keys have a little bit of the low end. So, you probably get a little bit of bass, sometimes coming in before the actual bass is coming in. So you want to be careful with those. But the higher keys, I think, could probably be a little bit more loose, a little bit more imperfect. Let's just quantize these lower keys over here. Select them all. And how I mentioned before, on Ableton, which is the software that I use, Command U would be the fastest way to like do it right away. And you see everything just goes onto the grid. Will sound exactly where the line is coming in, and you had something a little bit more structured and not so loose. So you see over here, these are coming in a little bit early. I like that they're in different starting points, but I would probably move them to the right a little bit so it can start exactly where, you know, where this, you know, lower key starts at, and it's not coming in before. And, you know, I think it gives it a cool sound now when it's coming, you know, after and not before. So let's see how these sound together right now. And I think if it sounds good, we can probably start like playing around with some bass sounds and see which one would be the one to go with this on a reggaeton idea. Let's take the key, the meter over here. So I'm cool with this. We can probably, you know, play around with it a little bit later, but for now I think this is a good, you know, starting point to start building on the track. So, you know, let's move forward. Let's find another, you know, either a plugin. I think, you know, to start reggaeton from the roots, from the starts, you know, it's always normally been done with a sub bass. Here on Ableton, like you have like the simple ones that I like to use because they have a, you know, good quality, a good low end. So I'll go with the operator over here. This will give you a good, you know, sine bass, you know, a sub. You see over here I'm playing, you know, on the higher octaves of it. When I started making music, I used to never have a controller, so sometimes I would have like all of these instruments and I would just go straight to the keyboard because it was the only keyboard that I had when I started. So, you know, if you see me going just over here and forgetting about these over here is, you know, a habit that I have. So, you know, sometimes when you're just scrolling through ideas, it's cool just to like play around over here and find, okay, I like the sound, and now I'll go, you know, to the actual keyboard and just play around with the keys. So I think this over here is a good sound. So I'm gonna just go hop over here to the keyboard and start playing around with, you know, a bass progression. Let's put the click back on, you know, and start playing around. So I think I have a nice bass for it. As you saw, you know, I start playing around with the higher, you know, octaves of the, you know, of the sound so I can find where the notes are. I think when you start going down on the keys, some of the notes start, you know, sounding a little bit alike because, you know, you have so much bass to it. It could sometimes get confused and you probably have something that you think is the note, but as you like put on the higher keys, you get to see it's not on the right key. So I really encourage you to like play around it on the higher ones just to find the right notes so you don't have like a wrong key playing, you know, underneath on your bass. And, you know, it's something that tend to happen to me when I started. A lot of people that, you know, I know producing have the similar problem. And it's because of that, like you can get confused because of like the sound of a lower, you know, bass starts sounding a little bit alike between those keys. So let's just select everything, quantize, and I think we have something good. Over here on reggaeton, like you see where you have like all these like 4 grids, I tend to like just use 3 of them so it doesn't sound as sustained when you add like the drums. Like sometimes when you leave the bass a little bit too long, it takes a little bit out of the groove. So for me, that's something that I tend to do a lot in my, you know, production. It's just like keep it a little bit before the snare comes in so you have a little bit of groove and it's not so stiff, you know, when it sounds. That's a little detail. It's kind of like not crazy important, but it's something that I feel gives a little bit of air and groove to the track. So let's see how everything sounds together right now with the bass. So I think we have a nice progression to start building and seeing what drum groove do we want on this. And reggaeton, if you listen to it, sometimes it could probably sound a little bit of the same, but people that know it or people that produce it, like, there's details and differences in certain snares, certain kicks. There's some that are really iconic that you put it into the drum pattern and it's a reggaeton beat. I tend to play around sometimes and use the same the groove, the you know the vibe that reggaeton has, which is just the kick and snare, boom, and if you had some samples from hip hop snare, like a hip hop kick or dance type of kick, it would give it a completely different sound. People won't even probably say it's a reggaeton beat because it doesn't have those iconic and straight from the roots samples. So let's just go to the ones that I know are really reggaeton, that are the ones that I started using when I started creating reggaeton music, which I got from the Looney Tunes, which were the producers that signed me, who are like my greatest idols. And just to have the sounds that they were actually using is something cool to have. And you can find it everywhere right now. Like, even I have some stuff out there, so it's easier to find than when I started. So let's just go through it and start finding snares. Let's start like finding the right snare that goes with this melody and progression that we have. So let's just write over here snare. You see a couple of them pop up. So I'm gonna start like scrolling through snares and see which one sounds cool and then combine it with a kick. So I think I like this snare over here. Bowl snare is a really signature one. So let's just start playing around with this one. I'm gonna open up a new MIDI track. Command-Shift-T is the fastest way to get to it. So let's just throw the sample over here. Just mess around with it. Sometimes like you tend to like listening to like how it is on the sample library that you have, but you can play around with it and just like go on a lower key and have a different sound. It's like going in the keyboard over here. And sometimes like it will sound perfect exactly how you had it, and sometimes like it will sound better just on a lower key or a higher one. So it just depends on your sound, what you're looking for. So music is amazing because it has no rules. You can just play around with it exactly how you want it and probably create something that's iconic and signature for you. So let's just start playing around with this snare over here and start building up these drums. these we really have to quantize it right now, because it starts like getting all messy. This is what's gonna drive the song. It's what's gonna give it, you know, the right groove. So let's just, you know, select everything over here. If you see right now, like everything on the MIDI, you know, track, there's a division over here. So sometimes what you want to do is select everything, and Command J, it just consolidates it and, you know, makes it just one. And so you don't have, like, when you open it up, it's not like all divided and you know, you got to go into different sections. It's just a complete pattern. So let's just do as we did before. It's just select everything, Command U, quantize it. So I see we're missing one snare over here. So let's just like copy, Command C, and paste Command V. And let's see how this sounds right now. See if everything is in place. I knew it. There's one missing over here, going in the wrong spot. So let's move it back. So from me listening to it right now, I tend to like start mixing as I'm creating. So I'm listening that it doesn't really have that much of a high frequency on it. So let's just, you know, go over here and go to an EQ and just find a simple EQ, EQ8 over here. And let's just add some higher frequency to it so it's not as mixed and not noticeable enough with the rest of the sounds. So let's see how it starts sounding with, you know, higher frequency on the snare. Yeah, so now it has, you know, a little bit more brightness, you know, it's more noticeable. So I think that works better for what we have on this track. So, you know, let's find a kick. I think that's, you know, the driving part and the driving force of, you know, a reggaeton track. The kick is always, you know, on the floor. It really, you know, it tends to have, you know, a little bit of low end on it. So, you know, you mix that with the bass, and, you know, it really gives it that punch and that, you know, that groove that makes people, you know, want to dance when they listen to it. So, you know, let's try to find, you know, the right kick and just play around with this and see if we can find like the one that combines well with, you know, the melodies and the snare. So let's start, you know, exploring some kicks over here. So I think we have a cool one. Maybe we can replace it. Maybe we can play around or add something, you know, to layer onto it. But I think this is a good, you know, starting point over here. Just created a MIDI track, and let's just throw it into like the MIDI. So as I mentioned, the kick is always like on the floor. So you will listen to it like you will have certain stops and certain, you know, grooves and things that go on the progression of the song, but standard reggaeton will always have the kick just going on the floor all the time, and, you know, it gives it that signature sound and signature groove that it always has. So let's just put this kick over here and see, you know, how everything will sound, you know, completely together. So now you see it sounds all over the place. So same as we did with the snare. Select all. Let's consolidate. Everything is on one same track. And now we just select all again. Command U, and we quantize. So I think now that we have, you know, snare and, you know, and kick, is let's start leveling and seeing, you know, what sounds better, what gives it, you know, that energy. If we need to, you know, equalize, you know, some of like the elements on it. But for me personally, when I listen to a reggaeton and when the drums come in, it tends to like feel like a feeling of explosion, like something just came in. Like it can't be like too soft. It can't be, too behind some of the elements of the melodic or, elements or the sub bass. It really needs to give it, that punch. So that's something that I tend to like play around with. It's like if I need to like some extra, attack into the kick. So that's something that I for sure like will be doing over here. So we can start like, playing around and seeing how that sounds. So let's see how everything sounds together and start playing around with getting the right levels to it. So right now it sounds a little bit flat, so let's start playing around with this kick and start like raising the volume over here and adding some EQ to it also. I think now is better levels to it. I really like hearing the kick really present on on the songs when I'm working on a reggaeton track. So that's something that's like in terms of my style and the things that I look for on a reggaeton is something that I really am specific about, and I listen to it on different producers that I know and songs that I grew up listening to. So I think it's something that a lot of people would agree on with me, that the kick needs to like feel powerful when the song comes in. So it's something good to have in mind. So let's EQ a little bit. I think it also needs brightness. So let's start adding some brightness onto this kick, and maybe a little bit of a touch of on the low end too. That would be the bottom side, the left side of the EQ over here. So I think they sound good. It's now okay going into like the mind of like a mixing engineer and seeing what it needs to sound like proper. And me, I like to start, as I mentioned, mixing while I'm producing. So I just want to add some attack onto like these two elements, which is the kick and the snare. And one plugin that I tend to use is one that I like over here. Plugins that knock is the one that makes it, and the plugin is called Knock. It also has a lot of different elements, which I will open right now over here so you can see. It can saturate the sound a little bit more, so it can sound a little bit more gritty. Same thing with the clip over here. It just elevates and adds certain textures and elements to a sound that could really bring it to life, or bring it to the front of the song. And every sound will sound different. Some of them will sound amazing with it. Some will sound weird or not as good. So it's just playing around. I really like to experiment with what I'm doing as I'm working on it. So for sure, as I mentioned, I really want to add some punch to it. So let's go with that and start seeing how that's supposed to sound. So you see, now it has a little bit more of a punch and an attack to it when you listen to it. It's not as, laid back. Let's add the same one, which I would just like copy and paste it onto the snare, and see how those two sound now with this plugin and adding that attack to it. It sounds a lot better. Now I can really feel the drums when I listen to it. So guys, I think we have the basic elements for the beat that we wanted to create, which are the melodic part of it. We have the chords, we have a bass, and we have the drums, which I think are the main ingredients to creating a song. So guys, on the next lesson, we will be going into the sections and the arrangement of what's going to be this track, and seeing how these elements that we have here are, you know, moved around and structured into a place where you can have a final product and have an idea what a song would be. Okay guys, so now it's your turn. Go and create your drum pattern, your bass, your chords, and your melodic element, and I'll see you guys on the next lesson.